Yes, I have started the recording.
Okay, great. So let's begin with a very short prayer. Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tam Hadevam Atmabuddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwarah Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Bhishaje Bhavaroginam Nidhaye Sarva Vidyanam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank all of you, especially your prayer group, for having given me this wonderful opportunity to talk about Advaita Vedanta and give overview, maybe over 3 or 4 sessions. And I'm sure it will be a good revision for me, so to say, and also a good introductory insight to those of you who are probably not so familiar with Vedanta, and maybe an opportunity to broaden your already available knowledge in case of some people who are familiar with it. Um, so, as I've already said, I would like to keep this a more of an interactive session and not some kind of a monologue that I will talk continuously for 30 or 40 minutes. So, as and when somebody thinks something is not clear or some questions come up, please feel free to raise your hand and stop me. And as I've already informed Srimati Mrinalini, please take some notes. It will help because what I'm going to talk over the next 3 or 4 sessions will be some kind of a structured approach to Vedanta. And what you hear in one session would be building upon what I have told in the previous sessions. And all these sessions will be connected with each other. And it will definitely help you to derive a lot of benefit from all these sessions if you actively take notes. That will be my sincere suggestion. So with that short preamble, let me straight away dive into the topic that we have chosen. So before I go into the depth of Advaita Vedanta in any form, I want to give a very broad overview of the overall big picture, context, and so on. Okay, so in the Indian way of things, in the Indian parampara, one can say, there have always been very many different schools of thought, which we call darshana, and in the recorded literature of our Sanatana Dharma, there are at least 12 different darshanas that we talk about. And these 12 darshanas are broadly classified as 6 Astika darshanas and 6 Nastika darshanas. And when we say Astika and Nastika, it does not mean acceptance of a god or Ishvara or the non-acceptance of a god or Ishvara. That's not how an Astika or Nastika is defined. In the Indian system, the Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, these 4 Vedas, these have been our body of knowledge, so to say, for so many thousands of years. And 6 systems accepted the prominence of the Vedas. The 6 systems of Astika darshanas accepted the Vedas as a source of knowledge. So the other 6 did not accept the Vedas. So that's why they became Nastika. So the Nastika Astika division comes from whether a system accepts the Vedas as a source of valid knowledge or not. Okay, and you would be surprised that within the 6 Astika darshanas, there are in fact 3 darshanas which do not accept an Ishvara. Okay, so they are Nastika in what we today would understand as a Nastika term, where God is not accepted. But we had 3 such darshanas in the Astika classification which did not accept a God. Okay, so I'll now broadly enumerate what the 6 plus 6 darshanas are. So the 6 Astika darshanas are called Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa. So these are the 6 Astika darshanas which accepted the Vedas as a valid source of knowledge. And the other 6 Nastika darshanas, they are 4 schools of Buddhism. Buddhism itself had 4, even today it has 4 schools, but we know them more as 2 broad schools. There is a Hinayana Buddhism and there is a Mahayana Buddhism. And really speaking, Hinayana has 2 subsects and Mahayana has 2 subsects. So between the 2 broad subsects of Buddhism, there are 4 philosophies. So those 4 Buddhist sects are part of the 6 Nastika darshanas. And the 5th Nastika darshana is Jainism. And the 6th Nastika darshana is what we call Charvaka. Charvaka, which is more or less a materialistic philosophy. Okay, so broadly, these are the 6 darshanas. And so all these darshanas, what do they do? Why do we have so many different sets of philosophies? The definition of a darshana in our system is that any school of thought or any set of philosophy should explain 6 or 7 cardinal things. There are 6 or 7 cardinal principles which everyone should explain, and this explanation should be logically complete without any loopholes. So what are these 6 or 7 entities? The first entity is the individual. Okay, who is an individual? What is the nature of the individual? Then the second is the world. What is this world? We see this world, external world in front of us. So what is this world all about? And then the third is a supreme power called God or Ishvara. Okay, even those who do not accept a God have to say why there is no God, why they don't accept a God. So you cannot avoid the discussion of God by saying there is no God and get away with it. You have to give reasons as to why a God does not, is not acceptable to the system. So God has to be handled. And then the relationship between the individual and the world, which we normally call samsara. Yeah. So the individual is born, he goes through the world, he goes through a certain life, and then his life comes to an end. There is a death. And so why is this life coming about? What are we living here for? The purpose of life. And explain a lot of things that happen to people during their life. For instance, why is there differences in the wealth or the poverty between people? Why is there a difference in health? Why do some people go through good fortune? Why do some people have bad fortune? These are the things that have to be explained with the the darshana, why there is so much of difference among people within the world. That is the third aspect, samsara. Then the fourth aspect is the relationship between the individual and the Ishvara. If you accept an Ishvara, what is the relationship? If you don't accept an Ishvara, then how do you explain what is happening in the world? So that is the relationship between the individual and the Ishvara. Then the fifth is, what is the cause of the samsara that we talked about, and is there a way to get out of this samsara? So there are different schools of thought. Some philosophies say, not none of the Indian philosophies say that, but many Western philosophies today, you say that there is only one life. You are born, you go through a life, and then you die, and that's the end of story. So that is one way of approaching what is this life all about. Whereas in the Indian system, we have accepted rebirth. So we accept that there is an individual which goes through multiple births. So one has to then explain what causes this multiplicity of births and what happens from one birth to another, and is there an end to this cycle. Okay, so there should be some concept of liberation. You can say there is nothing called liberation, you can say there is liberation. If you accept a liberation, you have to explain what is this liberation all about. Okay, so these are the 6 or 7 things. You can classify these into smaller pigeonholes and say these are not really 7, these are 6 or 8 or whatever, but broadly speaking, these are the aspects that one philosophy has to cover. So if a darshana is supposed to be complete, it should be able to explain all these things without leaving any gap. That is the hallmark of a proper philosophy or darshana. This is the way we define a darshana. Okay, now that is the broad background to what a darshana is all about. Now I will come specifically to the Veda and Vedanta part. Okay, so all of us know that there are 4 Vedas. There is a Rig Veda, there is a Yajur Veda, there is a Sama Veda, and an Atharva Veda. Okay, and not many people may know that each of these Vedas also have their own branches, what we call Shakha. And it is said that long back, maybe some 3,000 years back, 5,000 years back, there were something like 1,085 shakhas of all these Vedas put together. 1,085 shakhas. And over the so many thousands of years, many of these shakhas have been lost. And what we today have in our known, in the practicing circles where Veda is available, there are hardly some 35 or 40 shakhas which we have today. So much of Vedas have actually been lost. Okay, so imagine even the 35 to 40 shakhas that we have today, it will take several lifetimes for one individual to learn all of them and master them. So imagine how vast the knowledge base would have been when all the 1,085 shakhas were actually in vogue. It's mind-boggling that so much of knowledge was available, but it has been lost. Okay, and contrary to what many people believe, the Vedas were not just about religious rites. It is not just about prayer and meditation and doing yajnas and all that. The Vedas actually is our Indian, what we call the body of knowledge. So everything that had to do with any aspect of life was part of the Veda. So today you have what is called Ayurveda, the medicine, which the science of medicines from plants and other resources to treat illnesses. That Ayurveda was part of the Veda. And there were so many other, Rasayana Shastra, for instance. Indians were very good in metallurgy, and all these metallurgy and other chemical, technologies, they were all part of the Shastras. So Vedas were not just about rituals and prayer and meditation and so on. It encompassed everything. So we really don't know how much is lost, what was lost, because today what we have is so little a fraction of the original knowledge that you can have a great deal of discussion on how much we could have lost. Okay, now that's one part. When I say there is a shakha, even within the shakha there are 4 sections. Every shakha of the Veda has what is called a samhita bhaga, which is a mantra portion which deals exclusively with prayers. And then there is a brahmana shakha, not to be confused with brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya. This is a different brahmana. This brahmanam means this is the actual ritualistic portion. So this brahmana portion talks about how to use various mantras in performing various rituals, and it's more like a procedural part of the Vedas. And then there is an Aranyaka portion, and finally there is the Upanishad portion. Okay, so the Aranyaka portion deals with a lot of upasana techniques, meditations, and so on. And the Upanishad portion is also called the Jnanakanda, or it is also called the Vedanta. Okay, so the first three, the Samhita portion, the Brahmana portion, and the Aranyaka portion together, they are called Karmakanda, because there we talk about a lot of activities to be done, and the Vedas say you do this, you do that, and so on. So all the commandments come in the previous three Karmakanda portions. In the Vedanta portion, it is completely about knowledge, and specifically talking, it is about the self knowledge, what we call Atma Vidya. Okay, and so this whole 3 or 4 lecture series that you have organized with me, this will deal with the Upanishad part, which is called the Jnanakanda. Okay, so here from the big picture view, we have come to the Vedanta or the Jnanakanda portion, about which we will have. Yeah, so there is a hand raised, Deepa ji.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can unmute.
Sir, if you help me understand, what does a shakha consist of, or what does it mean? You said, for example, Ayurveda is one of the part of it, right? So can
Yeah.
we say Ayurveda is one of the shakhas?
No, it's not like that. See, the Shakha classification is different from the Ayurveda or Rasayana Shastra. See, there is this Atharvana Veda. There is this Atharvana Veda,
Correct.
which actually deals a lot with the what we call Laukika life. We can split our entire way of living into two parts. There is a Vaidika life and there is a Laukika life. And the Vaidika life deals with much bigger things like Ishvara, prayer, and Yajna, next birth, Punyam, Papam, all those things. Okay, whereas the Laukika life deals more with our day-to-day transactions, and the Atharvana Veda has a lot of portions which deal with science, what we today will call science. And I would think that Ayurveda and Rasayana Shastra and all this are somehow a part of Atharvana Veda, and these are probably coming in the even the Samhita portion or in the Brahmana portion. I don't know. I have not really gone into that level of detail in that part of the Vedas. My specialty is more on the Upanishads. Okay, so I would imagine that what we call Ayurveda or Rasayana Shastra and all other natural sciences, they were probably part of the Atharvana Veda, and they are not shakhas. I wouldn't call them shakhas.
Okay.
Okay, right. So we will proceed. So I've now come to the Upanishads, which we call Jnanakanda. Okay, so here in the Upanishad portion, we get all the philosophies, and while the Upanishads themselves are generic in the sense they talk about the philosophy of life in general, what we do find in the tradition is there are broadly 3 schools of thought within the Advaita, within the Vedanta. Okay, within the Vedanta itself, there are 3 schools of thought which are broadly called Advaita, Dvaita, and Visishtadvaita. Okay, and I'll briefly say what the difference between these 3 schools is, but I will be giving my viewpoints based on the Advaita Vedanta. I am not going to be talking on Dvaita basis or on the Visishtadvaita basis. Okay, so the main difference between the 3 schools, Advaita, Dvaita, and Visishtadvaita, is in defining the relationship between Jiva and Ishvara, or what we call Jivatma and Paramatma, and they also differ on what is their definition of liberation or moksha. So these 2 questions are the primary causes for why these 3 schools differ from each other. Okay, so in the Dvaita philosophy, what they hold is the jiva or the individual is always separate and different from the Ishvara or Paramatma. They can never be the same. And in liberation also, these two remain different, physically different. They are two different entities. That is the Dvaita approach. Okay. And in the Advaita approach, what we say is what you call Jiva is only a misunderstanding. Really speaking, there is no such thing called Jiva, and really speaking, everything is only this Ishvara or Paramatma. That is the approach Advaita takes. And Vishishtadvaitam takes a somewhat an in-between approach. It says that really speaking, Jiva is not different completely from Paramatma. No, it's a part of Paramatma. Okay, so there is some kind of a middle ground that the Vishishtadvaitam tries to take. And all the three schools of philosophy use the Upanishads as the basis for their interpretation. So you could actually say that the Advaita, Vishishtadvaita and Dvaita schools are essentially different interpretations of the Upanishads, and their difference is an interpretational difference. You could say that. But if you really go deep into their teachings, you would see that there are a lot of conflicting outcomes that come out of these three. Okay, so I will not deal with the differences and all that here. I will go only into the specific teachings of the Advaita philosophy. So from now on, you would hear me talking more or less entirely about Advaita and only Advaita. Okay, right. So we will now go step by step into the Advaita teachings and see how to make sense out of it. Okay, now whenever we learn something new, it is only logical that we first begin with something that we already know, and whatever new learning is coming, we somehow connect it to whatever we already know. If I suddenly bring a subject about which nobody knows anything, it's not going to make sense to most people. So the easiest way is to begin with something you already know, and from there try to step by step go out and reach out to the new teachings. Okay, so in that sense, as I said, every darshana has to deal with the individual, the world, and the Ishvara. Most of us know very little about Ishvara unless you have done some scriptural readings and you already have some knowledge. We assume that we know very little about Ishvara, and so we are not in a great position to talk about Ishvara as a starting point. Maybe after a few sessions, we will be able to talk about Ishvara in a more sensible way. But being the first step, we should try to avoid talking about Ishvara because it's not something we are 100% familiar with. And that's the same case with the world also. We don't know everything about the world. We know something about the limited world to which we are exposed, but a lot of things we don't know. Okay, so the individual is the best starting point. So we begin with the individual. Okay, now what our Shastras are saying is that you can broadly divide the individual, what we call Jiva. I'll start using the word Jiva more often. A Jiva is an individual. The question is, who is really the individual? Who exactly is the individual? There are schools of thought which say that the individual is a body. There is nothing other than the body. That is the Charvaka's viewpoint. But the Vaidika philosophy says that you can actually divide the body broadly into two elements. There is a matter portion and there is a consciousness portion. Okay, there is a matter and there is a consciousness, and all of us are a mix of matter and consciousness. Okay, even modern science says that our body is made of a lot of materials. When you go for a blood test, your blood test value for iron and sodium and potassium and all that is, hemoglobin, all that is measured. So there are a lot of minerals in the body. And we know that 85% of the body is made of water. Water is a chemical. So we know that this body is made of materials. And then there is consciousness, because we are alive, we talk, we walk, and we do a lot of things. So we are also alive. So there is consciousness and there is matter. And then the Shastras say that this consciousness is not an inherent property of the matter. That's the second lesson we know. Yeah. So the consciousness you only find in living entities. When we see a dead body, basically the dead body is what? It's a physical body, but without consciousness. Okay. So there is body which can be alive or dead, and then there is a consciousness which makes the body come to life. Okay. And then the Shastras say that the matter that you see is inherently without consciousness, and it gets consciousness from somewhere. Okay, now the whole philosophy is to say, how does the body get consciousness? What is this consciousness all about? And how can we learn more about it? So that will be the direction in which we will be going. Okay, now the Shastras tell us that you can classify this individual, the living individual, into 5 layers. There are 5 layers, what we call the kosha, pancha kosha. That's the term. Pancha means 5, kosha means a layer, or actually sheath, sheath. The English word is sheath. So it's like, you have these Russian dolls. You have a big doll, you can open it, and then inside you will find a smaller doll. You can open that and you will see a smaller doll. Like that, there are 6, 7 dolls, one within the other. You can imagine something like that. Yeah. So the first kosha happens to be this physical body, what we call the sthula shariram, or it is also called the annamaya kosha. Annamaya kosha, mainly because this physical body, annamaya kosha, is kept alive by giving it food. If you keep somebody without food for many days, there's a good chance that person might die. Yeah. So this body, physical body, is supported by food. So it is given the name annamaya kosha. Okay. And then the annamaya kosha, inside this, has a lot of what we call, from the medical science, we know there are these physiological systems that operate within the body. You have the blood circulation system, you have the digestive system, you have the way you breathe and exchange oxygen with carbon dioxide and so on. So these systems are there. These are all called physiological systems. In the Sanskrit word for it, the Shastric word for it is pranamaya kosha. Pranamaya kosha is the energy layer. Okay, that is the second sheath. Now this pranamaya kosha itself consists of 5 different elements, which we call prana, vyana, apana, udana, and samana. Okay, I'll come later as to what these 5 are. Right now you can just note down the names: prana, apana, vyana, udana, and samana. There are 5 sub-components, you can say, 5 components of prana itself. This is the energy level, energy layer of our physical body. Then going further inside, you have what is called the manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is the emotional layer. We feel emotions like happiness, sorrow, disappointment, anger, frustration. So these are all emotions, and the manas, or the mind, is supposed to govern all the emotions. Then going beyond that is the vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellectual faculty. there is the intellectual faculty which deals with, logical reasoning, analysis, sifting, fact from opinion, and all those logical faculty, even things like the ability to count, all those things. That is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then there is something called an Anandamaya Kosha. Okay, the Anandamaya Kosha is a little complex in the sense it needs a lot more explanation. So we will come to Anandamaya Kosha a little later. Okay, now I will deal with Vijnanamaya and Manomaya also a little more in detail. But before that, let me complete the Pranamaya Kosha, 5, Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. So the Prana, the Pranamaya also has a name Prana. One of the components also has a name Prana. Okay, so that should not confuse you, because you just have to accept that the same word is used in multiple meanings. Okay. The the word prana denotes the breathing that comes out of the lungs. The one that comes out of the lungs is called prana. The one that goes inside is called apana. And it is the same apana which helps in the process of excretion. So the downward prana is called apana. Then there is this vyana, which is nothing but the circulation system. Circulation system. So it distributes the various nutrients and other things that the body generates through food. So it has to, even the supply of oxygen and so on, from a scientific medical point of view, there is this oxygen which has to be distributed all over the body. So that function is vyana. And then samana is the digestive faculty. So when you eat food, it goes into your stomach, and there we know from science again that there is hydrochloric acid which digests the food, and then it goes to small intestine and so on. In the Shastra, the digestive power is also called the Jatharagni. Jataram means stomach, and this digestive power is given the name Agni. It's a kind of a fire. So it's called Jatharagni, and that is the samana prana. So samam nayati iti samanaha. So it is a digestive ability, the digestive faculty that digests the food and also ensures that all the cells get the nutrients that they receive. So samana and vyana, they work in tandem. They have slightly different functions, but they have to collaborate. So they work in tandem. And then finally there is a udana. The udana is some kind of a resistance system, or it's called a reversal system. So what we refer to by the word immunity, when you get some fever or cold, the body is able to fight. In fact, the fever itself is a symptom of the body fighting against some external infection. And then small things like, if something gets into your throat, for instance, when you're eating, something gets stuck in your throat, you start coughing immediately. Or if something goes into your nose, you sneeze and get it out. Or let's say some dust particle falls into your eyes, you immediately start shedding tears. Yeah. And these kind of protective actions, reversal, or let's say you eat something which doesn't agree with you and it has to be purged, either through vomiting or through purging. All these actions are responsibility of the udana prana. So broadly speaking, the entire physiological system comes under the responsibility of prana, pranamaya kosha. Okay. Now let's move on to this manomaya and vijnanamaya. So really speaking, this manomaya and vijnanamaya are not two different physical entities, but it is essentially the same entity performing different functions. And there are actually 4 functions of the mind. There are 4 functions which we classified in Shastra. Okay, one is Manas, the second is Buddhi, the second is Chittam, and then finally it is the Ahankara. So the Manas, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara, these 4 together are the mind. And for the sake of convenience, we split them into Manomaya responsible for emotion and Vijnanamaya responsible for logic and analysis. But really speaking, these 2 functions belong to the same physical entity which we call Manas. Okay. And then the Anandamaya Kosha, which we will probably cover after a few minutes. Yeah. Now, the 5 Kosha view can also be simplified into a 3 Kosha view. How? The Annamaya Kosha is still the same. It is given a different name called Sthula Shariram, or the gross body. Sthula Shariram, Sthoola, Sthula Shariram, gross body. The Anandamaya Kosha is still the same. It's given a different name called Karana Shariram. So it is called the Karana Shariram, causal body. And the 3 in between layers, the Pranamaya, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya, are combined together, and they are given the name Sukshma Shariram. Sukshma Shariram, Sookshma. Sukshma Shariram, or the subtle body. Subtle, subtle body. Okay. Now, we use this model, either a Panchakosha model or the Shariratraya model. The second one that I called is called a Shariratraya model. The Shariratraya model or Panchakosha model in different contexts depending upon what we are trying to explain. Yeah. So while these 2 are they have a different nomenclature in some levels, they are essentially the same individual jiva, and then there is this consciousness. Okay, I have not talked about consciousness so far, but the assumption is somehow all these are conscious when we talk about them. Yeah, so we're talking about a conscious jiva with a conscious physical body, a conscious pranamaya kosha, a conscious manomaya kosha, and so on. So we have not yet come to consciousness. We will come to it eventually. Okay. Now, when we talk about the Sukshma Shariram, it is not just the Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya, and Vijnanamaya. There are some more elements or members which we have to add. Okay, and these are the 10 Indriyas. These are the 10 Indriyas. There are 5 Jnanendriyas and 5 Karmendriyas. Okay, so what are the 5 Jnanendriyas? Jnanendriyas are basically the organs of perception. So this is the eyes, ears, the skin, which gives us a feeling of touch, and then the nose, that gives us the feeling of smell, and then the tasting tongue. The tongue has 2 functions. It functions as a karmendriya also while it talks. It functions as a jnanendriya also when it's eating and tasting. So here I am talking about the tasting tongue. So the eyes, ears, nose, the skin, and the tasting tongue, these 5 are called the Pancha Karmendriyani. I'm sorry. Pancha Jnanendriyani. Pancha Jnanendriyani. Then we talk about the Pancha Karmendriyani. The Karmendriyanis are the organs of action. Okay. And what are the 5 Karmendriyas? These are the hands, the legs, the talking tongue, then the organ of excretion, and the organ of reproduction. These are the 5 Karmendriyas. Okay. Now, when we talk about Indriyas, we have to again understand a difference in the sense there is a visible hand and a visible leg in the sharira, in the stula shariram. So why am I talking about hands and legs as part of the sukshma shariram? Yeah. So that's because the visible hand and the visible leg and the other organs that you see, the visible eye, the visible nose and all that, these are not called indriyas, they are called golakam. The visible hands, legs and all of them, these are all called golakam. And the indriya is essentially the power of, the power that makes these organs function. Okay, so if there are people in this group who are familiar with how computer hardware works, that's the easiest example I can give. Whenever you talk about a computer hardware, let's say a printer or a modem or whatever, or even the whole computer itself, the physical hardware is a dead matter. It does not function until there is something called a driver or an operating system that is loaded to the device. Okay, so the physical body or the golakam is like your hardware, and the indriyam is more or less like your driver. If you have a computer without an operating system, it will not function. So similarly, if you just have a golakam but the indriyam behind it is not functioning, then that's what we call a physical handicap. So we have people who probably have suffered from a paralytic attack and they can move their hands or legs. In their case, the physical leg or hand is available, but the power to move the hand or leg is gone. So that is the indriya not functioning, but the golakam is available. So these 5 karmendriyas and 5 jnanendriyas that we talk about are essentially part of the sukshma shariram, and they are the power or the activating component which makes the physical organs function. Okay, and you can say that about everything. When the kidney is functioning, yeah, Deepa ma'am.
So you
Please
said
unmute.
that hands, legs will come in sukshma. What is it? Sukshma,
No,
right?
no. I'm saying that the physical hand that you see, the visible hand, is called golakam. That belongs to the physical body, the annamaya kosha,
Correct.
or
Yeah.
the sthula shariram. But the power to operate the hand, that belongs to the sukshma shariram.
Okay, understood. Okay.
And that's the case with every indriyam. Every indriyam has its specific golakam. Yeah, so let's say there is a person who's visually impaired. That person's physical eye is there.
Correct.
That person's physical eye is there, but the power to see is gone. Or let's say somebody is affected with his hearing. The hearing is gone, hearing impaired. That person's physical ear is very much there, but the power to hear is gone. So we make a distinction between the physical organ that you see and the power of that organ to function, and the health of the organ. That is the indriya. So when we use the word indriya, it is that part which belongs to the sukshma shariram and not the sthula shariram.
Okay.
Okay.
So every part of sukshma is actually anna, but anna is just outside. And
No. Sorry. Every part of sukshma is not anna.
Anna is sukshma.
Sukshma shariram is not annamaya kosha. Sorry. The sthula shariram. The sthula shariram is annamaya kosha.
Okay. If you could help me once again repeat, you said that the 5 koshas can be also classified in 3 layers.
Correct.
I understood the second, third, fourth as sukshma. Annamaya kosha is what can it represent?
Annamaya kosha is known as the sthula shariram. STHOOLA.
Okay. And
that's a gross body.
okay. And the Anandmaya kosha?
Anandamaya Kosha will be called Karana Shariram.
Karana. Okay.
Karana Shariram, which is the causal, Causal, causal body.
Okay. Understood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Okay. So now if we sum up the Sukshma Shariram, you can enumerate 5 pranas, 5 karmendriyas, 5 jnanendriyas, then manas, buddhi, chittam, ahankaram, total 19 components are there. Totally there are 19 components which go to make the Sukshma Shariram. Okay, so this is something you should remember, because we will keep coming back to this from time to time. This is something you may have to remember. Okay, today it may all sound very alien, because you are hearing all these words perhaps for the first time. I don't know, but over the next few talks you will get familiar with these words. Okay, now I'll come to the Anandamaya Kosha or the Karana Shariram. Okay, now before I go there, let me also bring the states, 3 states. We normally have a wakeful state and a deep sleep state and a dream state. Okay, now we are all in the waking state. I'm talking, you're all listening and you're asking questions, and so we are all awake. And then maybe after 2 hours, 3 hours, we'll all go to bed and go to sleep and wake up next morning, hopefully. And during the sleeping time, you would see that there are some dreams, and then there are dreamless sleep. Dreamless sleep, what we call deep sleep. Okay, so our Shastras recognize this, and so we have specific words for these 3. So there is a Jagrat Avastha, that is the wakeful state. The wakeful state is called Jagrat Avastha. Then the dream state is called the Swapna Avastha, or it's also called the Swapna Shariram. Okay, but I'll use the word Swapna Avastha because the Shariram is slightly different. So Swapna Avastha is when you are in a dream state. And then the deep sleep state, which is a dreamless sleep, which is called the Sushupti Avastha. Sushupti, Sushupthi. Sushupti Avastha. Okay. Now, the Jagrat Avastha is characterized by a fully awake Sthula Shariram and a fully functional Sukshma Shariram. Let me repeat, the Jagrat Avastha or the wakeful state is characterized by a fully awake gross body or Sthula Shariram and a fully functional subtle body or the Sukshma Shariram. Okay, and the dream state is associated with a completely non-functional Sthula Shariram, gross body, and a partially functioning Sukshma Shariram. A completely non-functioning Sthula Shariram and a partially functioning Sukshma Shariram. Why do I say partially functioning? Because the prana is functioning, all your blood circulation, breathing, all that happens. But your eyesight, your hearing, your tasting, all of them are dormant. They don't function. And your mind is functioning to the extent it is throwing dreams. The dream itself is a mental phenomenon, and so the mind is actually the key instrument in the dream state, because that is what creates a dream. And of course the chittam plays a part in it, but we'll come to it later. Yeah. So the dream state is characterized by a completely non-functional sthula shariram and a semi-functional sukshma shariram. Now we come to the deep sleep state. In the deep sleep state, both the sukshma shariram and the sthula shariram are non-functioning, or I would say minimal functioning, because the prana is still functioning in deep sleep state. The prana is still functioning, but the mind is completely at rest. And that state is when you are experiencing your karana shariram, the causal body. So the causal body is associated with deep sleep state. Okay, now I have a question to whoever wants to volunteer. Can any of you recall how do you feel in your deep sleep state? Any volunteers?
Hi Vasu, this is
Hi.
Purnima.
Yeah.
Deep sleep, one can only say that I had a good sleep when one is awake.
Correct.
Actually, in deep sleep, one cannot say anything. One
Correct.
is oblivion of the rest of the world.
Correct. But I'm not talking about talking during deep sleep. I'm talking about what is your experience which you can recall after you wake up.
Relaxed?
Nothing. Relaxed. Nothing.
Nothing. Okay,
Nothing.
please note that word nothing. Yeah. Relaxed, nothing. Yeah, nothing is important. Okay, Purnima
Relaxed
wanted to say
also,
something.
relax is also only after waking up. Actually, in the deep sleep, one doesn't experience anything.
Yeah. Okay. Please note that sentence because we'll come to it in a few minutes.
See, only when one is awake, one experiences the how I should put it, absence of experience.
Superb.
See,
Superb.
but
Wonderful.
when one is awake, one experiences things, and deep
Yeah.
sleep is actually absence of experience.
Excellent. Excellent. I really appreciate that. It's a sentence I would have used in a few minutes. You kind of preempted me. Yeah.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Wonderful. So Purnima
Thank
ji,
you.
you wanted to say something.
Yes, Vasu, that's I think they all said like it's nothingness, like we don't feel or experience anything while in deep sleep, but after we wake up, we realize that we have slept well.
Sure.
So that remembrance or memory is there.
Okay. Lovely. And did I see Manjula ji raise her hand, or she came on unmute?
Yeah, I just said that nothing in relaxed state.
Okay, so you already had your say. Okay, Ekta ji, what do you want to say?
Yeah, can we say Shunya Avastha? Shunya? Nothingness?
Shunya is a little controversial. Yeah, but then somebody, Kishori ma'am said nothing. So you can say nothing and Shunya are synonymous. Yeah. But the word Shunya has different connotations, and we'll probably analyze the word Shunya maybe in the third or fourth session.
Okay.
Really speaking, we don't accept a Shunya because to say there is a Shunya, you need to have a conscious entity.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is really speaking no Shunya. When you say Shunya, it is what Kishori ma'am said, absence of experience. But in the absence of experience, you still have the experiencer who can talk about the absence of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So really
Got
speaking,
it.
it's not Shunyam.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks everyone for whoever volunteered to answer my question. So the point I want to make was, in the Karana Shariram is essentially a state of blankness or darkness. I would use the word darkness, or as Kishori ma'am rightly said, absence of experience. You could say nothingness. and more importantly, it's a state of ignorance. It's a state of ignorance because in deep sleep, you don't even know about your own existence. You are not even aware of yourself. You are not even aware of where you are. You have no experience of time and space. And that is the characteristic of the Karana Shariram or the Anandamaya Kosha. And the word Anandamaya Kosha is used because, as most of you said, it's a state of bliss. You know, when you have slept very well for about 8 hours, you really wake up with a great deal of freshness and energy. And when you recollect that deep sleep, you feel very happy. Yeah, you can recollect the happiness that you felt during the deep sleep after you wake up. So that happiness cannot come if you had not experienced it in the deep sleep. Yeah. So that's the reason it's called Anandamaya Kosha. It's also called the Karana Shariram for a different reason, which we will probably explore in the next session. Yeah. So I think we have a logical point where we can end the session today. And if there are questions, if there are discussions, I'm happy to continue. But from my side, I think I have completed whatever I wanted to tell in this first session.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
Ekta ji.
much.
Yeah, you mentioned in the beginning the Ishvara and Jiva, the terms. Is it same as Purush and Prakriti?
No.
No.
Purusha and
Okay.
Prakriti, we will
In
talk about
Sankhya
afterwards. Yeah,
comes in
because
Sankhya.
they are different views, and Jiva and Ishvara are both a mix of Purusha and Prakriti.
Mhm.
Jiva is also a mix of Purusha and Prakriti. Ishvara is also a mix of Purusha and Prakriti.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And Dhanashri?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I have a question that you have really explained very well and in detail three shariras and three avasthas.
Mhm.
But we generally say there are four avastha and four sharira, like Mahakaran Deha. As so, is it right? That
Where
I
did
mean,
you
I have
hear
a
this?
hello.
Where did
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I
Where
have
did
read
you?
it in generally I read in Marathi about this all like Dasbodh. If you by any chance know, this is the grantha which I generally study about. So there they
Mhm.
have mentioned four avastha and four sharira.
Okay. Now I am coming from an Advaitic point of view,
The
and we don't
Turiya.
accept the fourth avastha. Okay.
That
We
is
only
Okay.
say there are only three avasthas, and these three avasthas are sufficient for us to understand everything.
yeah.
Okay. And in Tamil, the
Okay.
word avastha is pronounced as avasthai, and avasthai in Tamil means trouble.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. No, I used it because of Marathi background of it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
in
know.
the States.
I know. In Sanskrit, avastha means a state. Okay.
Yeah.
But in Tamil, my mother tongue is Tamil, and in Tamil, the word avasthai has a very localized meaning. It means when you are in trouble, especially when you have some physical problem, or somebody is
Okay.
troubling you, you call it avasthai. Okay. So
Okay.
my Guruji very jokingly says that these three avasthais are enough for you. You don't need a fourth avasthai.
Okay. All right. No, I just came across it, so I thought to ask
Yeah.
about it.
So we will come to that point about the fourth avastha, because the Shastras talk about a Turiya. When you
Yeah.
say that the
Yeah.
Turiya actually
Yeah.
means the
Yeah.
fourth one. Okay.
But
But
it's
then
a
the
long
fourth
way.
one,
It's a
1
long
minute,
way.
ma'am. I'll finish, Kishori ji. I'll finish, then you can talk. Yeah. So the Turiya, even though it's called the fourth one, it is not the fourth avastha. So it's a misnomer. Yeah. Now, Kishori ma'am, you can tell
Okay.
whatever you want
Then
to say.
I think there is a long way to reach that. I said.
Yeah. So we still have a long way to go. So
Yeah.
today was just the introductory session. I just created the foundation for the next step or the next layer, so to say. So we will wait for Turiya for a little more advanced, session.
Exactly.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Right. Okay. So can I take it that there are no more questions? Everybody is done with their questions? Yeah. Great. So we'll close with a very short. Subhashini ma'am, I think you wanted to say something. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, she had raised her
Sorry.
hand. Yeah.
Subhashini? Hello,
Sorry,
Subhashini
sir.
ma'am? Yeah, tell me.
I was also about to talk about the Turiya state, sir, but I'll wait for the answer.
Yeah. So Turiya, there is no
Thank you.
Turiya state, There is a
Okay.
Turiya which the Upanishad mentions. In fact, it says Chaturtha. It doesn't even say Turiya. The word Turiya came later, but the Turiya has a different connotation. It is not a fourth state. There are only 3 states. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Right. So, Mrinalini ma'am, give me a few seconds. I'll say a closing prayer and then we can formally, have your
Sure,
remarks,
sure.
closing remarks or whatever. Yeah. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti 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 Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukhabhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much. It was such an enlightening session. Enlightening because as kids, as growing adults, we have heard these terms quite a lot, but exactly the meaning and the depth of it is clear. Even I have my notes. I have to revisit them till
Yeah.
we have our next session because
Sure.
it's really a very nice
Thank you.
foundation. I would say the first session. And thank you so much for getting. I mean, I had approached you, and without any hesitation, you said yes, you would like to do it. And
Yeah.
here we are with our first
Sure.
session.
So
So
I'm just
thank you so
sharing my
much.
knowledge. I'm very thankful for the opportunity, and I would like to have as many sessions as you people want. I would strongly suggest you please go through the notes and think about what you heard, and then come back with questions. I hope the beginning of the next session will have a lot of questions. Yes, ma'am. Subhashini ji, you wanted to say something? You raised your hand.
No, sir. Thank you, sir. Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And I just have one final remark. The next session, as per your original plan, is after 4 weeks. Okay. So if there is a way you can make it a little more frequent, that would help, because in 4 weeks, a lot of things can evaporate. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there is a good chance that the audience may come with a very fresh mind in the next session also. So if you can somehow arrange, a little more, maybe once in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know. You people have a schedule, and I leave it to you. If you can make it a little more frequent, that will help all of us. That's my only request.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'll discuss it in the
Sure.
group probably
Sure.
and take a call.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Namaste.
you so much. Have
Shubharatri.
a nice evening. Shubharatri.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
night.
धन्यवाद सर
You. Bye
धन्यवाद
bye.
Thank you.
धन्यवाद
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ashwini. Thank you.
Shubharatri.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.